This is your host, Stanley Black. Welcome back to the Section 121 Leader Podcast, where we're continuing to look at types of power and influence as related to Section 121, verse 41. So last time we began talking about verse 41. Today we'll dig in a little bit more on how this is relevant from a practical standpoint in life. So again, no power or influence can or ought to be maintained by virtue of our position. And the verse says the priesthood, but I proposed in the last episode that this applies to any positional authority. And then it goes on to explain persuasion, long-suffering, gentleness, meekness, etc., these other attributes that help us maintain lasting authority, or rather influence, in the individuals who we have interacted with. So let's continue looking at this from a sociological perspective, types of influence and authority that people have, and see where they fall. So founder authority is the authority of someone who started something. Now we see that this authority can be quite influential for a time, but from a business perspective, it wanes over time, as we see, for instance, when they kicked Steve Jobs out of Apple. Of course, Apple floundered after that, and they brought Steve back. But quite often, the position of founder, or the person who started something, makes people want to follow that person's ideas and receive their influence. If the founder is brusque and mean with people, over time they do seek to replace him. If the founder exercises righteous influence, if they are kind with others, if they honor the agency of others, if they help others feel successful, then people generally like to keep the founder around. The second one is ownership authority, which is very similar to founder authority. It's where, if we're talking about a business, that the business owner kind of calls the shots of what happens in the business. Of course, this one very much is demonstrated as a limited authority, again, that cannot be maintained simply by virtue of the position, as people can leave a company. They can exit. They can say, hey, you know what? I don't want you to have authority over me anymore, so I'm gone. Bye. Whereas a owner who treats people with kindness, who helps people to feel loved, who helps them feel like they are intelligent, that they are worthwhile, can retain influence even after the person leaves the company, because they think fondly of that person and the things they taught them, and they may even continue to reach out to them on social media, etc., because that person blessed their life, helped them understand things, and made their life better. So again, that type of leadership is persistent when following the principles in Section 121. Punitive authority, of course, is the authority to punish, and we see that discussed back more in the previous episode where I was talking about the concept of you have to. And many children, for instance, don't understand any other authority except the you have to punitive authority. That of all the authorities is the most limited, because in that case, if a person is feeling punished, particularly unjustly punished, they will get out as fast as they can. Relational authority is how people have influence in the lives of others because of being connected. And again, if following the principles in Section 121, this relational authority can be quite powerful, quite influencing, to such a degree that it can create a sense of loyalty, and people want to stay with the team, the company, with whatever group it is, because they feel a personal connection to it. But when a person starts to exercise positional authority primarily, and does not consider the agency, feelings, etc. of other people, then this relational authority weakens very quickly. Reward authority is the authority to give compensation. This, in a business context, of course, is quite powerful, as business leaders are able to give compensation, praise, and other types of rewards. But again, this type of authority is very limited, even if by, frankly, the fact that at some point the resources usually run out. And when the resources run out, you could have a wonderfully dedicated team of people, but most likely if they're not receiving the rewards that they expected, they will leave, and your authority ends. So results authority is an influential type of authority where people choose to follow a person because they know that person gets results and achieves higher outcomes. And this one really ties into the concept of kindness and pure knowledge and enlarging the soul, as an individual is able to collaborate with other people in a way that gets other people to give their best to accomplishing a specific result. And so this is a more durable type of authority and influence, because even after they're gone from a company, people may still reflect back at this type of leader who was able to get consistent good results while treating people well and try to emulate the things that they did. So again, their influence persists. Expert authority is similar in that if someone is the deep expert on something, that they are seen as an authority in that space. But let's face it, we all know situations where there was an expert who was not kind to others, who did not treat others with respect. And what did people do? They found ways to move on to other technologies or other arenas that made it so that that expert was no longer relevant in their life. And finally, referent authority is the authority or influence that you have because of how you treat them. And at the end of the day, of course, this ties deeply into Section 121 and is truly the most lasting form of influence. Because when you respond with respect, compassion, empathy, and other attributes described in this section of the Doctrine and Covenants towards other people, then they desire to stay around you. They desire to keep your influence in their life. So hopefully this discussion, a little bit deeper from a sociological perspective, helps really bring home the concepts in this verse. Thank you to Shauna Waters, who wrote the blog post that I used as the quick reference for this list of attributes. I have the link to her blog post in the description for this podcast. And I hope that digging in a little bit more helps you see how leading in the Lord's way is far more persistent and allows you to maintain influence in the lives of others far more than just trying to retain the you have to power or the requiring power associated with a temporary position of authority.